In the grand scheme of things, there's probably not too much that we agree on. There's probably more disagreements than there are agreements, whether it comes to politics or double or single stuff Oreos. I know, just a lot of hot takes. Personally, I'm more of a single stuff Oreo kind of person, but no matter who you are, what country you're from, if you're a good or bad person, really, no matter who you are, there is one truth that resonates with everybody that we all agree on, and that is, of course, that we all want to be Blender add-on developers. Your parents tell you that you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, maybe an electrician, something that makes a lot of money, that would make them proud. Fuck your parents, okay? Today we are going to become Blender add-on developers. You're going to be a disappointment to your parents. You're going to afford pizza maybe once a week. I mean, you're probably going to need to starve yourself, honestly, because nobody's going to buy any of your add-ons. And the one person that does buy it, they're going to leave like a 1-star rating and tell you, you know what? It's pretty bad. It was a pretty fucking bad add-on, but we do it anyways because we love it. Now, some of you probably have gotten past the point of wanting to be a Blender add-on developer, and you're like, okay, if I want to reasonably do this, maybe make a bit of money or make a tool that helps me, I'm gonna need to learn Python, I'm gonna need to learn coding, basically put on your coding glasses and all that kind of stuff, right? And maybe you tried to do that, you went to the scripting workspace, this is where all the code is written in Blender, and you thought to yourself, I've never been in this workspace, and neither has anybody else, because this is where, dreams come to die, right? Maybe you got to import BPY and, import like math.utils or utils. See, I'm already making mistakes. You're declaring variables, you're adding things to other things, and long story short, you realize very quickly that you're completely out of your element and you do not belong here, okay? This is a big, big ocean and you are a tiny, tiny fish. So you thought to yourself, okay, there must be a better way to make add-ons that doesn't involve scripting or anything like this, and until recently, you would have been fucking wrong, okay? Only recently there has been a major development that lets us make add-ons using, drumroll, using nodes, which I know is kind of a complicated idea as well, but it's way, way easier than scripting. So let's talk about how to make add-ons using nodes. And before we get into it, let me give a demonstration, something to get you lubricated, something to hype you up. What is it that us Blender users do 90% of the time? Is it creating renders? Is it creating nice projects? No, it's just deleting a cube and adding it because you have, or that's a plane. We're not at that level of complexity yet. You're deleting and adding cubes because really that's all your inspiration can lead you to. You don't have any motivation to do anything else. Wouldn't it be nice to have a shortcut that does this kind of stuff? So not like this X and this mesh cube. We want to automate this process. I'm very glad, I'm very privileged to introduce to you the revolutionary add-on that I'm calling Shift-Y to open a pie menu. So Shift plus Y lets us add in a cube and then delete it. I know, crazy stuff. Or even, and this is where it gets a bit spicy, Control-Y. And this is a different kind of menu. This is not a pie menu, but a panel menu. So here we have this and this, and it does the same thing. And I know, how are we going to get to this level of complexity? We're going to talk about it, but the way that I made this add-on, and this is literally something you can install as a Python file, okay? This is a legitimate add-on. The way that I made this, and I'm going to teach you how to make it, is using Serpens, the new thing that is sweeping the scenes of the Blender market. Girls are flocking to anybody who uses Serpens. They're leaving all the other dudes behind. They don't care about their wealth. They don't care about their looks. It's all about whether or not you got yourself a big Serpens. This came out like 12 days ago. It's kind of a new idea, and this is an add-on that lets you make, and hear me out, this is an add-on that lets you make other add-ons. I know, it sounds like a crazy idea, but with this one add-on, which does cost money, by the way, but it's not very much, I expect this price to go up very soon, because I would personally pay much more than $12, but get it while it's hot. What this add-on lets you do, I don't know what I was saying, it lets you make add-ons using nodes. So it's an add-on that enables you to make add-ons without scripting or anything like that. You can see it's all node-based, and you could read this little instruction manual or you could watch this tutorial. So yes, the way I made this, let's zoom in here. The way I made this little pie menu and the other version as well that lets us add and delete the cube, which is a simple program, is using Serpens. And you can see if we open up our visual scripting workspace, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, you see a whole bunch of nodes. And long story short, these nodes are what lets us do that add-on stuff that I showed you before. We're literally going to make an add-on that we compile, and then we can export it as its own file that other people can install onto their computers, etc. And I know what you're thinking. Nodes, that's a fucking nightmare. Look at these white sockets. I haven't seen those before. These layout sockets or maybe menu sockets. Really, they're called it's not design. It's called interface sockets. There's a whole bunch of new stuff going on here, but rest assured, this is kind of, not perfectly, but kind of very intuitive. So let's talk about exactly how to do this. And before we get started, I'm actually going to start up a new instance of Blender just to make sure that nothing I did before gets saved, any of the shortcuts I made, etc. Okay, so fresh scene in Blender with our cube and all this. So when you install Serpens, and that's again from the Blender Market or wherever you want to get it, you're going to go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons. You should already know this part, and install Serpens. So you click Install, and then you go to wherever you downloaded your zip file. So for me, that's going to be there. Of course, in my infinite wisdom, have already installed Serpens. You are like a kindergartner. A kindergartner, what is that? I wish I could be a kindergartner. You're like a kindergartner, and I'm like in second grade bowling you around because I already know how to read. So make sure that this thing is installed, and once you install the Serpens add-on, basically what it's going to do a bunch of stuff. But long story short, it's going to add in a new editor type, and that, of course, is this visual scripting workspace, right? Or it's not a workspace, it's more of an editor. You're going to have all these in your normal version of Blender, but this will not be here because this is what has been added. When we click this, you can see we have a editor that looks exactly like any kind of other node editor. So it kind of looks like compositing nodes and material nodes, and maybe you've done animation nodes. It's all pretty much the same. And that is, of course, because it uses the node system of Blender, but just adds in a whole bunch of nodes specific to this. There's a show tutorial button. We're going to skip that because, we're not virgins to this, okay? We can handle this. This isn't like hot stuff. We may be the new kid in the block, but we can handle ourselves at least for now. What you want to do is create a node tree just like you would create a material. And look at that. This is so nice. Thank you for using Serpens, blah, blah, blah. There's a tutorial. This developer really is he's kind of like a god. Maybe that's a bit too much, but $12 plus all these nice messages, whatever. You want to make a node tree, and just like a material node tree would create a material, this creates a node tree for our add-on. So this is a very kind of convenient abstraction for what we want to do. So what is it that we want to do for our add-on? Well, it's going to be that same thing from before, the pie menu or the other kind of menu that does what? It lets us delete the cube or add it or whatever. And really what we can do is we can start like Shift-A-ing to add in a bunch of different nodes, and you can type in the name like pie menu if you already know the name. Or if you're kind of not very confident with this stuff, there is a basic node setup that you can play with, or there are a couple examples. We are going to make ours from scratch. So let's make a new node tree. I'm going to call this our simple add-on, okay? So to start off, what we are going to do is Shift-A, and I swear all this will make sense once you dip your toes in and you've been in the water. It will warm up. I know it's freezing cold to begin with. What we're going to do is add in an interface node. This is something that we interface with, right? It's basically UI, input, output, stuff that we actually deal with. And for our interface, we're going to either add in a pie menu, or we could start off even simpler with a basic menu, okay? So nothing too complicated here. We have a menu, pretty much like the Shift-A menu. So this is an example of a menu. We made a menu. We can give it a name, call it maybe not my menu, but maybe the menu, because it's a big deal. And, this node kind of creates the menu. There's nothing more complicated than that to do. Now, normally this wouldn't really do anything, even, just in its base form, but especially when we do not compile this add-on. So you want to think of this like every time we're adding in a node, what we're doing is we're adding in code, and when we're done writing our code, we compile the add-on, and that makes it something that can actually execute and work, okay? So whenever you add in a bunch of nodes and you're happy with them, make sure to hit this button, okay? Or the shortcut is Shift-R, I believe. Yeah, okay? So what we want to do is we want this menu to open up, because right now there's no way to access this, right? There's nothing we can do right here. We want to access this menu with a hotkey like Shift-A or whatever it may be. To do that, we are going to add in Shift-A and execute, because it's something we are doing. We are doing a key mapping, right? This is something we're typing on our keyboards, whether it be a Shift-A or any other kind of hotkey. So you could either add in a key map or, again, Shift-A and type this in once you know the name. What this node does is it's pretty intuitive. This lets you make a shortcut that will let us access this menu. So let's add in a shortcut. First of all, we need to decide what is this a shortcut for. Is it for a panel, a pie menu, a menu, an operator? This is going to be just a shortcut for the menu, of course, because this is a menu type. So just enable this, and then we have to choose what kind of menu. It's going to be this one. So it's a custom one because we made it, and it's accessing this one. You can also access internal menus in Blender, like the Shift-A menu. All of these are accessible. There's quite a few. But we are going to use our custom the menu, right, which is this one. And by the way, you could do pie menus and all this. Like I said, an operator is kind of like the most basic form of this, where we're not calling a menu that stores a bunch of functions, a bunch of operators, things we can do, but this just goes directly to the source, okay? So we've added in a shortcut. We now need to define what it is. So let's do something like Shift-Y. So here's Shift, or you can do Control or Alt or combine these. Let's do Shift plus, type it in Y. And now we have a hotkey, Shift-Y, that opens up this menu. And you're probably thinking to yourself, hooray, first day of school, we can now hit Shift-Y and, oh no, nothing happened. Let's think about it. Why did nothing happen? What did I teach you? Of course, you have to hit this button. If you forget it, well, just hit yourself on the head until you do, okay? Whenever you add in nodes, you want to compile it just like if you were programming, okay? So now we have compiled our add-on, we hit Shift-Y, and now we have an empty menu called the menu. And in fact, let's call it like the cube menu, because that's what it is. And when we do this, of course, we need to update our key mapping to open up the cube menu, because the one we had before doesn't exist, okay? So next thing we need to do is actually add things into our menu. So let's compile this again so it changes the name. We need to add a bunch of stuff, just like this has, you know, a bunch of stuff right here, or any other menu in Blender, like Control-A, anything like that. So what do? We go to interface, because again, it's things that we interface, it's things that we see, right? We interface with it. And this time we don't want a menu, but we want things that make up the menu, aka a button or a checkbox or something like that. So we have a button. You can see that this has a socket, and so does this, that they match, right? And this is saying I have a menu and I want to add properties to it. And how do we do that? We just connect it. Pretty obvious. You'd have to be in a pretty bad place to not understand what's going on so far. So hopefully everything's simple enough. We have a hotkey that triggers this menu because they share the name, and that's going to be Shift-Y in our case. And the menu is going to have a button. The button is going to be called, this is the thing that's going to add the cube, so let's just call it cube. And we don't have to do anything so far with any of this, none of this execute or description or anything like this. Let's just try to compile this and see what we get. Shift-Y, now we have this cube button. Of course, it doesn't do anything. And also, it's an undocumented operator if we hover over it. And this is the little tooltip, the little description. In other words, if we were to update this, so let's make this node a bit bigger, you can see we can add in a description, and we can say, what does this button, what is it supposed to do for somebody who doesn't know what happens when you click it? They're afraid maybe it's going to install a virus or something. We tell them that what this button does is adds in a cube. Idiot. Hopefully a comma is fine here. I haven't tested that. So Shift-R to compile. And now when we hit Shift-Y, we have our cube. And when we hover over it, it adds in a cube. Idiot. Okay, so now we know what this button does. A couple other things is we can add in an icon, just like this mesh menu has a triangle and this one has a curve. Blender comes with a bunch of icons, and I think we can actually add some ourselves. But for this, I'm just going to type in cube to find something that's cube-like, and we could use any of these. So let's just use this icon. So Shift-R to compile. And then what do we have here? Shift-Y gives us our cube with our little cute little icon. The girls will love that. Let's see. One other thing I want to talk about before we give this button functionality is one thing I didn't mention in this key map. I didn't mention what is this any space. And by the way, you can add in a bunch of key maps here so you can have a second shortcut, etc. Let's just close that one down. What we can do is we can say, where is this hotkey eligible, or where can we actually trigger it? Right now we have it in any space, so anywhere I hit Shift-Y, we get this menu. But realistically, we can't really add a cube right here. Doesn't make much sense. We only want it in the 3D viewport, so we could say any space. Nah, screw that. Shock it to the side. Forget about it. This is a distant memory. We're going to say only access this in View 3D. So Shift-R to compile again, because we updated it. And now when we hit Shift-Y, it works over here, but when we hit Shift-Y here, I'm trying to click it, nothing's happening. So only when we're in our View 3D. And in this case, I think that makes sense. You could have it only in the outline or sequence or anything like that, but that's okay. So next thing we want to do is add in a bit of functionality for this button. What should it do? Well, it should run an operator. In other words, an operation that does what? It does the same thing as this Shift-A mesh cube, right? It adds in a cube. To do that, what we're going to do is we're not going to like write the code for this ourselves, right? Because this is already packaged in Blender. It's something that can already be done. So let's go to Shift-A, execute, since it's something that is being done. It's something that's being executed, and we are going to run a operator. So when we look at this menu, there's going to be a button in the layout, and that button is going to execute. Again, we connect this. It's going to execute a internal command, something that's already made, or something that's already rather packaged in Blender. Of course, we can make a custom operator, but with this internal one, we just type in cube and then look for like primitive cube add mesh. And really every operation in Blender, at least anything that's exposed, should be here. So we can add a whole bunch of stuff. We're only in the A's and now the B's. There's so many. This is going to add in a cube, and we have all the properties for that, like the location of the cube that's going to be added, the rotation, the scale, all that. So one thing we want to edit is the scale should be 1, 1, 1, so it's not like a infinitesimally small point. So now when we compile this again, Shift-R, I'm tired of giving you that lesson. The birds and the bees should only be taught once. If you forget it, that's on you, okay? Once we compile this, we can hit Shift-Y. That gives us this button which operates, or doesn't operate, it executes this operator that adds in a cube. Does exactly that. What we can do is we can change the location, which is not going to update the location of this cube, because again, it's only saying put it in this location once it's added. So again, Shift-R to compile, and then Shift-Y, cube, and now it's been added to the new location. And I'm sure you can figure out kind of the rest of this. You could put in custom parameters just for the intro of this. Not the intro, the spawn point of this. Let's move on. And I guess we didn't update this since it added it back in its original, in its updated location. Look at me telling you to update, and then I forget to do it myself. Do as I say, not as I do, okay? Now let's add in another button that deletes this thing. Should be pretty simple. We just duplicate Shift-D, this button, add in another thing for our layout. So we just keep adding things in and they'll keep showing up. For this one, we are going to add in a delete operation. What is this going to do? It's going to get rid of the default cube, comma, idiot, my favorite part. And for the icon, in other words, what's that little image that's going to be shown? Let's just have like a little X icon, like a little delete icon. And so far, if we do this thing, let's see what it looks like. Now we have two options. The cube is going to add one. The delete's not going to do anything because, of course, you know, we didn't tell it what to do. To add in an operation, we could literally just duplicate this operator, this run operator, and switch it out. And by the way, just because this says delete, and this is kind of obvious, but I guess I'll just mention it after sipping some water, because wow, my throat. Nothing better than a bit of water. Even though this says delete, there's no reason we can't have the delete operation add a cube as a little prank, right? This is just a label. It doesn't actually describe what it does. That's obvious, but if you're not a programmer, maybe that wasn't obvious, right? For this one, we're going to send it to a different execute block, a different run operator. And for this one, let's have it delete, and we're just searching for something that's already in Blender. And let's look for like a delete object. So that should be exactly what we want. And even for this one, we have options just like we had over here, some parameters like do we want to say confirm the deletion? So this is what it looks like. So Shift-Y, delete, do we want to delete? Okay. That is the confirmation. We can actually just get rid of that so it doesn't prompt us next time. So cube, delete, etc. That's pretty much our add-on. If you want to do another version of this, we could do a pie menu, and you might think, oh, it's going to be a lot of work. No, it's pretty much the same thing, right? And this is the idea of why you want to do node-based. You could switch stuff very fast on the fly without going back to your script and writing a bunch of code. So let's do it. What we're going to do is we are going to add in yet another shortcut. This one is going to be a pie menu. We're going to have it be, let's add in a pie menu. So Shift-A. It's going to be an interface, but I don't want to look through there. So we're just going to add in a default pie menu. This one's going to be called American Pie. Getting very, very creative. So creative, I've lost my way of speech. Sometimes silence is more effective than the spoken word. For this pie menu, again, make sure that you have the type selected correctly, not the menu, but the pie menu. In this case, we select American Pie because that's the only option. And for this, I'm just going to basically duplicate. And by basically, I mean exactly duplicate these nodes. And very quickly, we've essentially kind of created our code without any extra work. So let's see what this one does. Let's see if we forgot something. So compile, and then let's see. So we have Shift Y gives us the cube and delete cube, and then Control Y. And did we not do this? We didn't do it. Control Y. I knew I forgot something. So this is the second hotkey. Let's try that again. And this is kind of like the real scripting process. Although if I did a scripting tutorial, it'd spit out an error. I'd be like, okay, time to cut the video and do an hour of debugging until I get it right. So let's try that again. Shift Y, cube, delete cube, Control Y, and now we have our American Pie pie menu that works exactly the same way by virtue of this one working, right? Because we just duplicated it down here. Okay, so let us save our super valuable progress. Well, we'll call it something very topical, like, I have a Patreon. I don't know what it means, just, just a little fact of life that exists. We've created our add-on. Let's just do a final compilation so it's good. And now what we want to do is export this thing so that we don't need for somebody else to have Serpens to have this node network to run it. We just want them to go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and install it, okay? To do that, to make that kind of distributable file, we're going to go to Visual Scripting, so that's N menu, okay? We're going to give this add-on a name. Let's call it, I don't know, call it, again, I have a Patreon, something just that would naturally slip off the tongue. Author, default cube, or CG matter. Got a bit of a split identity about that one. Description, it's a garbage add-on, and you could keep adding in like resources, like the wiki, warning, stuff like that. But I think that's pretty good for now. You could say, okay, this should be compatible with version 2.9 of Blender and above, stuff like that. Or at least it should be minimum that version, and this is version 1 of the add-on. You could do all of that, but let's just do a final compilation. And now that you have your name, your code, all this, and again, I say code because this represents our code, and I'll show you what that means in a second. Once you have that set up, we go to export, export add-on, and it really is that simple. So I'm just going to export this on the desktop. Again, I have a patreon.py. That is a Python file, not py like I have a Pythagorean theorem. Maybe you'd think it'd be that, but you'd be wrong. Here's our add-on, and of course you could make more complicated stuff, but here's just a script file that we have created. So let's just restart this so that we don't have any instances of, our Serpens thing. So again, if we go to Visual Scripting, we expect this to be empty so that it's not running it off the nodes, but it's running it off of the compiled add-on that we can now distribute. And when you open up Blender, maybe on somebody else's computer because you're selling this thing, what you're going to do to install it is you go to Edit, to Preferences, to Add-ons, and then Install, just like we installed Serpens add-on. Look at you, you're already a legitimate add-on developer. You're going to click this add-on, the Python file, double-click, and boom, you have a general type because we didn't classify the category. Again, I have a Patreon. It's a garbage add-on made by the default cube version 1. You enable it, and again, no Serpens going on here. In fact, we can even disable Serpens and it will still work. I'm not going to do it because I'm loyal. I'm not going to cheat on my man immediately, right? So we have this enabled. Shift Y gives us our menu, and then Control Y gives us the same thing. And by the way, just so you know, this delete operator was based on an object level, so we could actually use it for anything. So Control Y, delete, it will delete anything. But there you go. You've now made your very, very simple add-on. Look at us, something like 10, 20, how many minutes ago? It wasn't too long ago. 23 minutes ago or so, we were being like, oh, god damn it, there's no way I'm going to make an add-on. I guess I'm going to have to buy, or I can't even buy pizza once a week. We're not eligible, or I guess we're going to have to be doctors, lawyers. Well, finally, bring this news to your parents. Disappoint them. Tell them, Mom, Dad, I'm dropping out of college. This is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Anyways, hopefully you learned something in this tutorial. If you did, Patreon is a awesome I don't know if I mentioned it before, somewhere hidden in this tutorial, but Patreon is an awesome way for you to get exclusive tutorials, tutorials that I make that are not posted on Default Cube or CG Matter. They are privated so that, the people who have Patreon get those. There are exclusive tutorials. There's behind the scenes stuff. There's project file, so maybe I will actually give you the file for this. And by the way, just a little something for the people who are here for this little Patreon announcement, just so you can see a little behind the scenes. What we did when we imported in the Python file, and this is just a little bonus, is we imported in all this code. This is what we would have had to write. Now, of course, there's a bit of extra here that maybe we wouldn't have needed, but we would have had to write all this code right? That's what the nodes did for us. It's crazy. But either way, forget all that. Just erase that from your memory. There's something more important at hand. Patreon, you could get all those things. Also Discord access. I don't think I mentioned it. I want to say thank you to all 500 some, a little less, a little more, patrons that I currently have that are supporting both this channel and CG Matter. I hope that you guys are having a good day. Thank you for your service. I really appreciate anybody that is currently or is willing to become a patron. It is what keeps these channels running. And other than that, I think that's the end of the show. Now you know how to make an add-on. And by the way, if you're interested in more Serpens tutorials, I can make those if people are interested. Link in the description for the add-on. I don't know what add-ons I'd make, but I'm sure that there's something interesting that could be done. Anyways, I have been me, and that's it. That's the show. Get out of here.